Great. If you cannot see it, it's not my computer's fault. Just check on your side. All right.
I can see it.
Great stuff. So, Rewire for Wellness. We did week 1, and I hope those who weren't able to be with us last week had a gap to just catch up on what we did last time, just so that you are on board with where we left off. So today we're going to look at a little bit of neuroscience and more towards the concept of resistance. Because, I mean, we did have a look at a couple of challenges for last week. You had to go and look at what it is that you wanted to change, where you are at the moment, and where you would ideally like to be within each dimension. And as you went through that, and maybe you did try and implement 1 or 2 of the action steps that you wanted to take. Every time we try and implement an action step and we actually try and move forward with that to bring about sustainable change in our lives, resistance is an inevitable topic that's going to come up. This is why it's difficult to change, because we have that resistance factor. Neuroscience plays quite a big role, which is why I would like to run through the terms. I'm going to go through it a little bit quicker. Everything's in the workbook, so you're always welcome to just go back through it if you missed anything. I'm also not going to touch on all of the terms that's in the workbook. Reason being, it's not all relevant for exactly this purpose. I just need us to, nope, that one. Okay. To go through the important ones. So what we are going to look at in neuroscience, resistance, the science of change, the whole concept, the one reason why it's important for us to know this is our bodies function in a certain way. We all function in a certain way. We have unique ways to go about it, but all of our bodies technically works in the same way. So this is why it's necessary for us to understand how it works, because when we understand how our bodies operate and why it does what it does, it's easier for us to then start having the awareness and actually be able to bring about sustainable change, which is why we're all here. We want to have awareness of our wellness and actually be able to implement sustainable strategies for us to improve our overall wellness. So let's jump in. What we believe about ourselves and our life is rooted in our past experiences. So that's a combination of our thoughts, which is neurological, as well as our feelings, which is the chemical reaction that takes place, that we embrace during these events. So that creates ultimately our state of being. What this relates to, what this means, is when you, let's say, for instance, you were a child and something happened to you. You create, there's obviously a memory that's connected to that, and then an emotion that's connected to it. So that thought and that feeling combined then creates this past memory that we now have in our subconscious. And that is something that we keep relating back to, and it keeps coming up as a trigger in our current lives. When we change the way we think, we physically change the actual structure of our brains. So again, as we are talking now, as you are learning and you're going to see new terms, perhaps, maybe it's terms you haven't seen before, your brain is physically changing as we go through all of this. And in order for us to change habits, behaviors, actions, beliefs, thoughts, we have to challenge our beliefs. So our beliefs that we have about all of these past events, everything that has happened to us, everything that's built our current perception, our frame that we discussed last time, everything that's built up until this point. If there's a change that we want to bring about and we have a contradicting belief about that, we need to start challenging that belief and actually work it from that point forward before we can implement the change. New thoughts will lead to new choices that lead to new actions and behaviors, which lead to new experiences, and that generates new feelings. So in this process, we create a new state of being. It all starts with a thought. So I know we've all heard of the law of attraction and all of that positive thinking stories. So there's an important gap that my personal opinion that they keep missing with that is it's not just about the positive thinking. It's not just, it doesn't start and end there. When you start with this new thought and you create a new thought around something, you will make new choices. There will be new behaviors. The whole point will be to go over into new actions and to generate that new experience and that new feeling. It's a whole process that brings you to that point, not just the new thought. You can't just have a thought and just leave it there. You will need to go over into action at some point. This quote of Dr. Joe Dispenza always gets me. You cannot see your way out of a challenge if you are looking at it every day on the same level of mind, emotions, thoughts, and feelings of the past. So in order for us to move forward and to get to a new place, to this vision that you created, that you have in your mind of who you want to be and where you want to be, you have to start looking at it from a different perspective, a new belief, a new mind, new emotions. There we go. Our bodies are designed to keep us in a comfort zone. So technically to live in a survival mode. This is why we're still alive, is because our bodies know how to do that. It can keep us in that comfort zone. So a good way for me to explain this is to think about your body as being in a natural state. So let's talk in kilometers an hour, like when you're driving. So let's say my natural state for my body is 60 kilometers an hour. And I now want to start with a new habit, and I implement a new habit. Now this positive habit takes me maybe up to 65, 70, 75 kilometers an hour. My body is still okay. It's still within an okay range of the natural state, the comfort zone of 60 kilometers an hour. But now let's say this positive change takes me on a high, and I'm just like overly joyed. I'm happy, like everything is just going amazingly well. I get to 80 kilometers an hour. I'm just feeling epic. My body red flags way out of comfort zone. So what it does is it introduces resistance techniques, which may look different for everyone. It can look like self-sabotage. It can look like procrastination, OCD, perfectionism. Everyone will respond a little bit differently to that. Self-negotiation is a big one. So that is when you set your alarm for 5 o'clock in the morning and your alarm goes off and you have a million reasons why it's okay for you to sleep a little bit later. So we self-negotiate ourselves out of greatness, which is just a typical resistance technique. So now we get to 80 kilometers an hour, all of our resistance techniques kick in and it brings us back to natural state comfort zone. So it'll do that even though it's a positive change because your body is hardwired in your subconscious that this is where it needs to be safe. So it'll bring you back. It also works the other way around. So if you go into a little bit of a slump, as we do, ups and downs, go into a slump, as soon as you go in too deep of a slump, something kicks in and maybe it's just like, oh my word, no, let's go for a run. This is too much. I'm too down. Let me just go do something. And it brings you back up again. So it'll always revert you back to that comfort zone or natural state that it's used to. So this will circle back to this natural state in a bit as well. So the example that I mentioned here as well is a child growing up in probably an emotional difficult environment. And for that child to be able to cope as a defense mechanism, he has to shut down emotionally in that environment. So it serves him well to do that as a child in order to protect himself. So in that moment, great. But now let's fast forward 20 years on. Now this person is in a relationship and he is not able to open up emotionally to his partner. He's avoidant, he's dismissive, and that will inevitably create a conflict situation and you'll never have a satisfying relationship if this persists. In a situation like this, it's easy to actually see now that it's something that did serve you well as a child, as a protective mechanism, as your comfort zone, may not serve you later in life. So the one important thing that I want to mention here is as we go through any type of change that we want to make, and as resistance comes up, to not get frustrated or feel shame or guilt or anything related to that. We have to approach this with compassion, because at some point, whatever your body is doing and taking you back to, at some point that served you. At some point that was your survival mechanism and your defense mechanism, is something that you needed in that moment. So very important, always approach any change like this with a lot of compassion and self-love. Resistance is an inevitable challenge we encounter when we intend to make a change. So even when the change is positive. Naturally, we will seek the path of least resistance. So even if that choice is slowly taking everything from us. So again, we'll go with the path of least resistance. So that's going to circle back also to your hardwired systems. That is your subconscious, the 95% of what we do, our actions, behaviors, thoughts, and feelings of every single day. When we, however, have awareness of what our resistance looks like, we are able to work on an action plan in a conscious way to be able to address it and work through it. So it's not something that's going to go away, but with awareness, we can just work towards a solution that's going to be feasible. All right, any questions before we dig into some terms? I know I'm running through it quite quickly. Are we good? Great. All right, so the Hebbian theory, presented by Dr. Donald Hebb in his work, The Organization of Behavior. He came up with a term that we probably have all heard, nerve cells that fire together, wire together. So that quick video we also had a look at last week with the neurons finding each other and then connecting. So that's what that refers to. Nerve cells that fire together, wire together. So that's an oversimplification of the work he did, obviously. It refers to how we learn. So when we learn, these neurons will find each other and they'll start forming the networks. So a neuron, or your nerve cells, is the fundamental units of the brain and nervous system. So these cells have the ability to store and communicate information between each other. So what happens is, as you learn new things and as these new teachings, habits, behaviors, and so forth get hardwired, or it gets hardwired in your system, the more you do it with repetition, it starts building neural networks or nets. So that's groups of neurons that are fired and wired together to form a system of neurosynaptic connections. So that can be related to a concept, idea, thought process, memory, skill, behavior, or action. And these networks are formed through combining the law of association, which is how we learn, with the law of repetition, which is how we remember. So that is just going through the same action over and over and over again, as with the example of last week when we learned to drive a car. So that is something that gets hardwired over time. And this is how we create the hardwired programs in our subconscious that we automatically use every day, is through our neural networks, building the neural networks. Neuroplasticity. This is a breakthrough in this field in neuroscience when they came across neuroplasticity, which refers to the physiological changes in the brain that happen as the result of our interactions with our environment. So basically the brain's ability to change its synaptic wiring based on the experiences that we have all around us. So from the time the brain begins to develop in utero until the day we die, the connections among the cells in our brains reorganize in response to our changing needs. So it's a dynamic process which takes us very far away from the old thinking and the old line. I mean, we all remember, what's that? An old dog can't learn new tricks. This basically throws that whole statement out of the door. Just the fact that we can now say with evidence and with science, we can say that your brain changes for your whole life. So it's not something that you can ever say, I'm not able to change, I'm wired this way, or any of those excuses that we love to make just because we don't want to put in the effort. Structural plasticity is the brain's ability to actually change its physical structure as a result of learning. So it physically changes. It's not just something that happens on a chemical level. It's a physical wiring that takes place. That being said, the brain's ability to change versus the effort it takes. So when we look at this graph, it goes from the age of 2 up to the age of 70 or beyond. And your ability to change in response to your experiences, it decreases, but the amount of effort increases. So it doesn't say that you cannot change as you get older. It just says that the amount of effort that change requires increases. The reason for that is the more rigid our hardwired networks become as we become older. So let's say I want to learn a new behavior by the age of 60. I need to unlearn probably 10 other behaviors for me to learn a new behavior. Whereas if I am 4 years old, I probably don't have any other behaviors that I need to first unlearn to learn a new one. So it's just because of all of our hardwired habits that we've already built up until that age that it becomes a little bit more difficult and it takes more effort to change. But still completely possible 100% if you have the willingness to put in all of the effort to actually make that change happen. All right, great stuff. So System 1 and System 2 thinking, Keith Stanovich and Richard West proposed these two systems with which the mind processes information. So we spoke briefly about the subconscious activities, which comprise 95% of what we do every day. That refers to the System 1, which operates with little or no effort, with no sense of voluntary control. It's automatic or hardwired programs. So an example would be 2 plus 2. Or how you brush your teeth in the morning, or how you make your bed in the morning. So, and how you drive. This is what 95% of our day consists of, is hardwired programming. System 2, on the other hand, that would be the other 5% of conscious activities that we do every day. So that's where we allocate our attention to mental activities that requires it. So an example would be having to park in a tight spot. So, I mean, we all do it. We turn the music down when we have to concentrate in the parking lot or anything on the road. So that's just with the System 1 and System 2. When we look at energy usage of our brain, it's about 20% of our daily energy usage goes into our brain, which is why our brain reverts to operating from System 1, because it takes less energy, because it's hardwired, it doesn't have to overthink things. So this is why we revert to 95% to our hardwired programming. So when you're tired and you feel that all of these resistance and you don't have energy, you're probably less likely to see a change through. That is why, because when you're tired and you're drained and you have no energy left, your body is inevitably going to revert back to System 1. It's just going to keep you in motion until you get to your bed so that you can get up the next morning. Which is why having an energy generation source also is extremely important. Cognitive ease. So cognitive ease refers to how easy it is for our brain to process information. So again, System 1, easier to process because it's hardwired. System 2 takes way more effort. We get to a space of cognitive ease through repeated experience, clarity of vision, priming, which means exposure to one stimulus that influences the response to another without conscious guidance. An example that we got here is that when a child sees a bag of candy on a red bench, the next time the child sees a red bench, it might associate that with the candy. So it's the priming concept. So that again takes you back to the law of association and then the law of repetition together, forming that the cognitive ease as well. And a good mood also contributes. So our brains will look for what feels familiar, true, good, and effortless, even if it is no longer serving us. And I cannot make this point strong enough. I feel like this is probably the crux of why I wanted to talk about neuroscience, because this is how our bodies work. So even if a habit is not good for you, even if it feels good, and you know cognitively it isn't good for you, your body will still revert to that. So you
Can
might get frustrated because you're struggling to make the change. You keep fighting against resistance and you're just not getting through. It's because
can I sorry,
yeah,
can I ask something? I'm so sorry.
no, don't be sorry.
To me, I have always had willpower and the like inner strength to do things, but lately my biggest holdback is my level of how tired I am and exhausted. I'm constantly so drained that I can't even force myself to get out of bed, not because I'm mentally weak, but physically because my body can't. So I want to make changes and I want to move forward, but I am so tired all the time that I don't know how to get past the tiredness, because sleeping is not going to fix tiredness. It is, I don't know. So that is what holds me back. Sorry to interrupt.
No. So I think this might be an important topic to touch on. So even if we have to continue on in our third session with the other information as well. So this tiredness, this energy that drains. So I'm going to use this example. This is just a picture that I create for people. Let's look at the term headwater. So headwater refers to the source of a river. Let me just look into the camera. The source of a river. So you have many sources that goes into this river. So many headwaters that feed a river. And let's assume the river is all of your resources running through you. So that refers to your energy, love, joy, compassion. Let's also refer to your financial resources, physical resources, your physical energy, anything, any resources that you need to operate fully during the day. This is your river. And your headwaters, your sources of this river that feeds this river. Then this river goes into a waterfall if it's full, overly full. It will go over into a waterfall. If it's not, it's just going to be a river. So every time you want to give, every time you want to put out there, so you have to go to work, you have to go do grocery shopping, you have to spend time with your family, you need to, at some point, maybe just go do some personal hygienic activities and all of that. So there's a million things that we need to do every day. And all of that comes from your river. It taps your river. When you don't have sources feeding your river, then this river will run dry. You will be expected to be at social gatherings over weekends, but you don't have a waterfall from which you can give people from yourself without draining you. So now what do you have to do? You have to give from your physical river. You're draining your resources every single time you are not feeding your resources. So what I mean with feeding your resources, and yes, I know you said that it's completely difficult to actually just be able to get up and do one thing now. If you don't, for day 1, 2, 3, maybe day 4, push through that extreme tiredness, that extreme lack of energy, lack of willpower, just for a couple of days, because you know it's going to serve you in the long run. Because once you can just push through that, you just need to feed. You're so drained right now that there's no way that anything will be able to even come in if you don't physically take that last little bit of energy and just say, I'm going to do this, because if I don't do this now, it may lead to any form of discomfort, disease. I mean, there's a million things that can happen. So pushing through, this is again the resistance. In this case, your resistance that you're referring to is a complete lack of energy. So that's just your body doesn't have anything left to give. You have to push through. Just one day, just 2 days, maybe 3 days. Just get 1 or 2 little habits where you feed you. No one else, where you feed you. Because when you feed you, you are able to start building your river again. At the moment, your river is like not even a little stream. So how would you get your river full again? Just to think of a couple of examples of how you feed yourself. Everyone's going to be unique with regards to this. This is why I haven't gone into a lot of detail with regards to actual activities, but mindfulness is one of the big ones that comes to mind. So within that, yoga, meditation, visualization, just sitting in nature, maybe just putting your feet in the ground or on grass, touching something that's alive outside, sitting in the sun. Getting the morning sun, by the way, is amazing for your circadian rhythm, because it puts your body in a motion where it's able to generate the melatonin. Yep, melatonin for sleep, yes. To generate that melatonin at night again. So basic activities like that, where you consciously put out 10 minutes, 15 minutes, the more time you can, obviously the better, but start whatever your body is able and willing to give you. Start with that, and you sit for 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the sun, consciously, not sit there on your phone or do anything else. Consciously sit there and feel the sun. Just be in your body and be present. Because just the fact that you're consciously doing that, literally just the fact that you are consciously showing up for yourself, already feeds the river. It already feeds the river. Just because you believe that you are worthy to do that for yourself. So
Thank you.
I know it's not probably what you wanted to hear. You wanted to hear maybe drink a monster and go on.
No, it is. It's just like sometimes you need to hear someone saying it to you. You sometimes need someone to preach to you. And to be like, do it, get off your ass and do it.
Because it's not easy. No one said, oh yes, all of the memes online is like, think positive and everything's going to be easy. Just think this and your life's going to be amazing. It doesn't work like that. And we can read a million memes about how positive thinking will get us places, but that's not how it works. You need to actively want to be that person. This is why you need that vision, because that vision of what you see in your mind of who you are and what you achieve and what you do, that vision will get you up in the morning to go sit in the sun for 10 minutes, because that is one tiny little step towards that vision. And you know that you can get there because you believe that you have influence over your external circumstances, over the outcome. All right. Did I cover that, Nadia?
Yes, thank you. I'll attend to my sunbeaming moments. No, I'm joking, but thank you. That really helped. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So when we look at fixed mindset versus growth mindset, again, maybe this also helps with that. So with a fixed mindset, this actually relates back to the locus of control, having an external locus of control, believing that you don't have influence over the outcome of the situation. So people believe their basic qualities like the intelligence or talent are simply fixed traits. They spend their time documenting their intelligence or talent instead of developing them. They also believe that talent alone creates success without effort. So we can see the flaws in this kind of thinking, but there's also a space in which this kind of thinking may have served us at some point in our lives. Maybe you wanted to get good grades in high school, and a fixed mindset would have served you in that space to go for the route with the least resistance and choosing subjects that you know you would have done well in and so forth. With a growth mindset, however, a growth mindset is something that works well for future development. So people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. So this view creates a love of learning and a resilience that is essential for great accomplishment. So again, this would relate when we look at locus of control to your internal locus of control, those who believe that they have an influence over the outcome of their lives and circumstances. So again, growth mindset, when you have a growth mindset, that's essential for wanting to change anything in your life, because you have to believe that you're able to change things in your life. If you don't believe that, then any change that you're going to attempt to make is not going to get you there. Now we get to intentional change theory. This was Dr. Richard Boyatzis. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. So what they did was, in a study, they saw that people respond differently to an intentional change that is consistent and aligned with who they want to be, compared to people who need to make a change in order to avoid something bad from happening. So as an example, let's look at a patient who goes to the doctor. The doctor tells them they have to lose 30 kgs, or they're going to have a heart attack, or maybe they have to stop smoking because their lungs don't look great, or whatever. Whatever the case may be, if they come to you from a perspective of you have to stop doing this because you could die, that is a great catalyst for change, but it's not a sustainable one. It's not going to sustain the long-term change. You might change for a month or two. When you look at coming from a perspective where the doctor may have asked you, what is your vision of your health? Who do you see? What is it that you want to do with your body? Where do you want to be? If you come from it from that type of approach, where it's open-minded, you're actually speaking to the parasympathetic nervous system, not the fight or flight side of yourself, but the relaxed, more like, oh my God, visionary, creative, that side of you. Because now you have to think forward. You're thinking about, wow, this is the person I want to be. Now you come back and you're like, what? Wow, okay, so this person needs to lose 30 Ks. I need to lose 30 Ks to be able to do that, right? But now I'm not doing it because something bad's going to happen to me. I'm doing it for my vision. I'm doing it for what I'm seeing in the future. And I actually believe that I can influence the outcome. So when the change that you're making is aligned with your vision, it's a sustainable long-term change that you're able to implement. This is again why I keep hammering on that vision and having clarity of your vision. Sometimes it takes time to develop this vision. Sometimes it doesn't come to you immediately. And it takes time to build the clarity with regards to your intention and the emotion that you want to connect to that person that you want to be. In that sense, as long as it's aligned, whatever change you're doing aligned with that vision, the sustainability of it immediately increases. And we want to change as a choice, not as a reaction. All right, moving on to your personality, which creates your personal reality. So your personality is made up of how you think, act, and feel. So all of our thoughts, all of our actions, and all of our feelings, emotions, usually connected to triggers and things that keep happening to us, all of that is our state of being. So we can be either on the left-hand side, where your personal reality is your old self, based on your past experiences. You can live in your past experiences and emotions, where every day you are just reacting. 95% of everything you do is just reacting to whatever is happening in your circumstances. On the right-hand side, that is a personal reality based on the vision of who you think you want to be, whatever it is that you've created in your mind. And now to take your thoughts, actions, and feelings and direct it towards the vision. So you have this choice every single day to either choose to think, act, and feel as your old self. So you don't have to really make that conscious choice because it just happens. Or you can make the conscious choice to think, act, and feel towards the vision and whatever it is that you've created as the person that you want to be. So in this sense, when you think of think, act, feel being your personality creates your personal reality. Just on that line, can you see the possible challenges with regards to believing certain things about your personality, believing that it's just my personality to procrastinate, it's just my personality to be a perfectionist, it's just my personality to be OCD. Can you, like, as soon as we start making that a part of our identity, your whole being is going to start searching for evidence to support that every single day. And you're going to think, act, and feel as if that is who you are. And it's just the belief that you somehow, somewhere picked up. Maybe someone somewhere told you, oh my word, don't be so OCD about that plate standing there. You know, it's maybe 2% of your day is being a little bit OCD. I think there's another word, OCD, for it. It's behavior, yeah, not the disorder obsessive compulsive behavior. So all of us, we do have a little bit of things that we do, but it's not necessarily part of our identity and our personality. So as soon as we start, because we're moving towards limiting beliefs as well, so as soon as we start believing and thinking in a certain way, we're going to act in that way and we're going to feel in that way, and that is going to create the reality that we experience every single day. All right, so I'm going to read through this because I couldn't have put this obviously any better than Dr. Joe Dispenza did. Can you believe in a future that you cannot see or experience with your senses, but you have thought about enough times in your mind that it's now wired in your brain? And can you emotionally embrace the future potential before the actual experience so many times that you emotionally condition your body to reflect that new mind by signaling new genes in new ways? Which is literally what happens, by the way. They've done all the studies with regards to this. You are signaling your genes when you start with elevated emotions, when you transfer or alchemize, or whatever you want to call it, transmute your very limited emotions, beliefs, actions, thoughts, and behaviors. When you start taking that and you take them towards your vision, towards elevated emotions, towards joy, happiness, gratitude. As soon as you do that, you are physically signaling your genes and you are changing. Never mind that just your brain is changing, all the chemicals in your body changes as well. And you don't need to wait for circumstances to change for you to experience that inside of your body and for your body to be actually in that moment. So you can start generating that before the actual experience. So you don't have to have lost 30 Ks for you to feel like you are proud of yourself and that you are able to accomplish things in life. You can be successful. You don't have to lose 30 Ks for you to feel that. You can start feeling that. And once you start feeling that, it's actually going to drive you even more. It's going to light that fire even more for you towards achieving that. Because you believe you can, you're already feeling the emotion, and now you can really, really see your action plan through. If so, then your brain and body are physically changed ahead of the actual experience, and you just move from living in your past to living in your future. In fact, you are living ahead of time. So when you successfully apply this paradigm, your brain and body are no longer a record of the past, but a map to your new future. And to live by this law is to live by that quantum law. So I'm not obviously going to go into quantum physics, but you're welcome to look that up. It's a very interesting field. All right, so this is where I wanted to get to today. So neuroscience, just to give you a little bit of a backing as to how our bodies work. And now we're going to talk about the stages of change. I'm using the culture shock graph, which is a well-known graph. And I'm working this with ADKAR, which is for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So those are the 5 outcomes necessary for sustainable change. You need to have awareness. You need to have that fire, that desire to really achieve that. The knowledge to be able to know what it is that needs to change and all of that. And also the ability, so the skills to apply the knowledge to bring about the change. And reinforcement, which is probably the most important aspect, is a support structure would be a great reinforcement technique. So having a great support structure and accountability, someone who you can be accountable towards with regards to whatever the changes that you want to implement. And then whatever else you need to drive your change. If you know that there are certain, let's say you have the awareness that there are certain challenges that will inevitably come up for you. Then you can say, right, when challenge 1 comes up, I know that this technique will help me overcome it. Or you can give yourself a little treat once you overcome the first hurdle, if that is something that's going to drive you to just work through the first resistance and the second resistance. It's also something, this is also a plan that you can adjust as you go along, because sometimes some form of resistance may come up that you didn't even see coming. It is possible that during changes that things come up that you weren't even aware of, that's how you cope with certain environments. When we look at this graph, it's an oversimplification because what I actually wanted it to look like is you go up towards your honeymoon phase. So this is the great phase. When we implement a change for the first time, it goes great for the first couple of days. We're on a high, we get to the top, and then whatever happens, self-sabotage happens, or I procrastinate, or oh my word, I'm just like, I'm stepping back, it's too much for me, I'm overwhelmed. Many things can happen. So when that happens, our natural response would be to let it go and we dip down. The bottom, it's a negotiation again, and then we want to still make the change, so we have to go up again. So this process goes up and down and up and down until what we ideally want to see is a chart that looks like this. So it's going to go up and down, but we want our downs to be higher every time that it goes down, so that eventually your low will be higher than your initial high in your honeymoon phase. So this is how, when we spoke about the 60 kilometers an hour, 70 kilometers an hour, but if you do apply the stages of change and the ADCAR system, and your chart moves up like this, you are going to change your natural state over time from 60 kilometers an hour maybe to 70 kilometers an hour. So now you can go up to 90 instead of just go up to 80 before your body brings you back. So your natural state will increase. Your natural peak state, your natural level of energy is going to increase. Your natural level of like just your joy is going to increase, whatever the changes that you are applying. So it's important to know that it's going to go up and down, but you want it to move upwards in an upward direction where your downs keep being higher than the previous down. So that's something that you can also track over time. All right, so the exercise in your workbooks, I'm just using physical wellness again as an example. The exercise for each dimension. So last week, for each dimension, I'll just get to that. You have to go and think about your current strengths for that dimension, your old habits, behaviors, beliefs, thoughts, and actions that no longer serve you within that dimension. And just you had to go and start to think about your vision that you have for that dimension that you want. How do you see yourself in this example now physically? How do you see yourself exercising, eating, all of that? So the changes that you listed, the old habits, behaviors, and so forth, that no longer serve you anymore, that has reason to change. That is what you're going to look at. You're going to refer to that exercise, and you're going to look at this exercise. Number one, so it's based on ADCAR. So it's 5 questions. The first, so it's awareness, which is the first one. List the reasons you believe the changes are necessary. So just go and think about it. Don't overthink it. Just roll with it. And you'll see there's a little circle there. So you can rate yourself from 1 to 5. So I'm not aware of the change needed up to I'm fully aware of the change needed. Just so that you have a little bit of a scope. And it's something that you can always go back to and see, oh my word, it changed because now my awareness is even higher. So that's what's great about this type of exercises. The second one refers to your desire. So your factors, consequences that creates a desire for the change. Why do you want this change? What is your big why? And rate your desire. And it's okay if your desire now lies on a 2 only. Like, Nadia, your desire now for physical exercise might be on a 1. And that's fine. Then you know, then you rate it at a 1 and you move on. All right, just put it out there. As soon as we put things out there loudly, it takes the power away and it brings it to our awareness during the day. And it sits somewhere. It goes to sit somewhere and it lingers. So number 3, list 3 skills or knowledge you will need for this change. All right, so whatever change it is, just go list 3 things that you think you might need to know. If you can't get to 3, that's fine. And number 4 is your ability. So consider your list in number 3 and evaluate your ability to execute these skills or act on this knowledge. Do you have the ability to really see it through? And it's, again, okay if it's rated low, because if any ratings are low, you know where to put your focus, you know where to get help if you need to get help in any of the areas. And then you can reach out to the applicable first people who can help you with that. And the fifth one, which is the important one with regards to reinforcement. So list the reinforcements that will help you sustain this specific change in the long term. So any incentives that you can put in place to motivate you in times of resistance. So that's, again, your support structure and anything else that you think might actually help you. And build this list. You don't have to have all of the answers right away. It's something that you can work on. So you'll see for every one of the dimensions, there's 5 questions like this that you can work through. And again, focus on the dimensions that you feel you want to focus on now. You don't have to do all 8 at once. No one can change their whole life in a glimpse. So don't overwhelm yourself. Do one dimension if you only feel comfortable with doing one dimension right now. Then moving on to the self-assessment. Change your story, change your life. The story we tell ourselves about our lives, who we are, what we are. Your past does not equal your future. So what are the beliefs and perceptions about yourself and your life that you have been unconsciously agreeing to? So again, this is not something that you'll be able to answer and have all of the answers right away, but it's something to get you just thinking. And as you go along with your day, your week, and your month, maybe something comes up. Maybe you're in a discussion with someone and you're like, oh my word, I remember this is a weird belief that I have. Why do I even say these things out loud? So these things will come to you as and when you are ready to face it. Number 1, list some limiting beliefs you are aware of. And number 2, list one piece of evidence to the contrary of each of the beliefs you listed. So any limiting belief that you're listing, so just list one piece of evidence. If you can find more, that's great. To the contrary, so if you believe that in your identity, you have now taken in that you are a perfectionist, go find one piece of evidence of where you weren't a perfectionist today, even if it was not clearing out your emails. Anything that you can find that indicates to the contrary. This is how you start challenging your beliefs. And it's a very conscious process and it takes time. All right. Then, if that wasn't enough, there's a challenge. Just again, read through the vision that you had in week 1 for each of the dimensions. If you only did one, that's great. Read through that vision every single day. And then for 5 minutes per day, if you can more, that'd be great. For 5 minutes per day, right after you've read through this vision that you have, this picture that you've created, go do I'm going to send you, I'll send you all the link. I'm going to upload everything on the site tomorrow, so the link will be there too. There's a 5-minute, they call it a heart-brain coherence visualization, meditation, whatever you want to call it. So it generates an elevated emotion. So that whole meditation comes from what it's an organization called the
There goes Luna again. Sorry.
Yeah. It's called the Heart Math Institute. So it's a bunch of scientists, and they've done, I think more than 400 peer-reviewed studies on the heart-brain coherence meditation. So I'm going to send you just a 5-minute one because I know that this might be a process to get into. Maybe you can work yourself up to a longer one. And it's just to get you to get to an elevated emotion and to connect your heart and brain. And with that, your whole body functions better. It's amazing. So it's all science, nothing airy-fairy. And pick one action step or habit that you'd like to implement sustainably for the next week. So don't go big. Go with something that you can really do for the whole week. All right. I was gonna do that 5-minute meditation, but we are out of time, so we can do it next week.
Talk to me more about this self-negotiation, or are you going to talk about it next week?
No, we can talk about it now. So we are at 8 o'clock, so whoever wants to stay on for that, more than welcome. And if you cannot and you have to go, then we will see you next week.